Southwestern College in Winfield, Kansas, and a Master of Divinity from Perkins School of Theology in Dallas. He served on numerous boards and commissions. He's the former director of the Interfaith Hospitality Network, now known as Family Promise, and the former pastor of the Metropolitan Community Church of Roanoke. In addition to his work on city council, he currently serves as chaplain of the Hermitage Roanoke Senior Living Community. I look forward to hear what he has to say about love is what it takes to end violence. Our words of welcome. If you're comfortable, you would join in with me. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you express your identity, whatever your situation in life, whatever your experience of the holy, as you come seeking love, your presence here is a gift. Whether you are filled with sadness, overflowing with joy, needing to be alone with yourself, or eager to engage with others, all are welcome here. And our covenant, we commit to supporting each other with respect and direct communication as we work in community to explore spiritual growth and to be a force for good in the world.
Hope is the thing that perches in the soul and sings the tune and never stops at all. Hope is the thing that perches in the soul and sings the tune and never stops at all. Hope is the thing that perches in the soul and sings the tune and never stops at all. Hope is the thing that perches in the soul and sings the tune and never stops at all. Hope is the thing that perches in the soul and sings the tune and sings the tune. Without the world and never stops at all. Never stops at all. Never stops at all. And never stops at all. Hope is the thing that perches in the soul and sings the tune and never stops at all. Sweetest in the careless bird, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many more. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity. It has no crow, it never has for me. Hope is the thing that perches in the soul and sings the tune and never stops at all. Hope is the thing that perches never stops at all. Hope is the thing that sings the tune and never stops at all. Hope is the thing that bears in the soul and sings the tune and sings the tune without the world and never stops at all. Never stops at all. Never stops at all. And never stops at all. Hope is the thing that perches in the soul and sings the tune and never stops at all. Hope is the thing that perches in the soul and sings the tune and never stops at all.
Thank you, choir. That was a beautiful setting of an Emily Dickinson poem, which you may or may not know is my all-time favorite poem. Carrie, thanks for knowing that.
Make it my business to know.
Exactly.
What preacher wouldn't like that?
For our opening words this morning, I'd like to share with you this poem written by Wendell Berry called The Peace of Wild Things. And I invite you to pause for a moment and reflect reflect and on and take in these words. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the place of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning. I would like to invite all the young folks up to the front to sit with me here. So come on down. Some of you can lead the way for others who've never been up here. And there I am. Hello. This morning, the adults are going to hear from the Reverend Joe Cobb, who was the guest in our pulpit. Did everybody get a chance to see him? So they're going to learn from him about something that's kind of scary. It's something that a lot of us know about. Gun violence. How many of you have had to practice lockdown before? Yeah, it's kind of what we do. How many of you have ever been scared before? I get scared a lot. Yeah, some of us get scared. My niece, who is 5 years old, taught me something that we can do. She learned it from one of her teachers. It's something that we can do when we're scared. And we're going to invite the adults to participate with us. Some of you may have a little bit of visibility issues, but I'll do my best, because I'm up here. I'll do my best to talk you through what we're doing. I'm actually going to take my glasses off for this. You don't have to, especially if you're using them to see us up here. But I'm going to take it off so you can see where I'm touching, because this is what's called tapping. It's a method that some people may already use, and it interrupts those signals in our brain that are telling us to be very scared, and those signals that are telling us to be angry or telling us that we're anxious. And it interrupts them just enough for us to think a little bit, and for us to find some hope and some peace in that scary moment. So we're going to take 2 fingers. It can be both hands, it can be one hand. And we're going to start those 2 fingers above our eyebrow. And we're going to tap, 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 tap. And as we're tapping this, we say, I am calm, I am safe, and I am loved. Try it. I am calm, I am safe, and I am loved. And then we're going to move it to just outside our eye. Kind of between our eye and our temple. If that's uncomfortable, you can put it over your temple. We're going to say the same thing again. I am calm, I am safe, and I am loved. And then we're going to go below our eye on our cheekbone. I am calm, I am safe, and I am loved. And we're going to go to the top of our head. I am calm, I am safe, and I am loved. And we're going to go on our frenulum, which is just below our nose, right over our lips, right in the middle of that spot. And we're going to say, I'm calm, I am safe, and I am loved. Then go right underneath your lips, in that little valley between your lips and your chin. I'm calm, I am safe, and I am loved. Then we're going to tap on our collarbone. Find your collarbone, go just below it. I'm calm, I am safe, and I am loved. And this next spot might seem a little odd, but it's a really effective spot. And it's right underneath your armpit, right where your shirt, if you're wearing an undershirt, that's where that stops. I'm calm, I am safe, and I am loved. And you can keep doing this on all those different touch points until you feel calm, safe, and loved. And sometimes it takes a little while, sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes we switch sides, but it's those tapping points that interrupt those signals that say that you are not safe, and that you are not calm, and that you are not loved, because you are so very loved, and we want you to be calm, and we want you to be safe. So from here, we're going to go upstairs, we're going to have a little quiet time, we're going to talk about some safe space, and then we're going to have some unstructured playtime, because that is what makes me feel loved. Are you ready for it? Let's go.
Reading from Beloved by Toni Morrison. In the heat of every Saturday afternoon, she sat in the clearing while the people waited among the trees. After situating herself on a huge, flat-sided rock, Baby Suggs bowed her head and prayed silently. The company watched her from the trees. They knew she was ready when she put her stick down. Then she shouted, "Let the children come!" And they ran from the trees toward her. "Let your mothers hear you laugh," she told them, and the woods rang. The adults looked on and could not help smiling. "Then let the grown men come," she shouted. They stepped out one by one from among the ringing trees. "Let your wives and your children see you dance," she told them, and ground life shuddered underneath their feet. Finally, she called the women to her. "Cry," she told them, "for the living and the dead just cry." And without covering their eyes, the women let loose. It started that way, laughing children, dancing men, crying women, and then it got mixed up. Women stopped crying and danced. Men sat down and cried. Children danced, women laughed, children cried until, exhausted and riven, all and each lay about the clearing, damp and gasping for breath. In the silence that followed, Baby Suggs, holy, offered up to them her great big heart. She did not tell them to clean up their lives or to go and sin no more. She did not tell them that they were the blessed of the earth, its inheriting meek, or its glory bound pure. She told them that the only grace they could have was the grace they could imagine. That if they could not see it, they would not have it. Here, she said, in this place, we flesh that weeps, laughs, flesh that dances on bare feet in the grass. Love it hard. Yonder, they do not love your flesh. They despise it. They don't love your eyes. They just as soon pick them out. No more do they love the skin on your back. Yonder, they flay it. And oh, my people, they do not love your hands. Those they only use, tie, bind, and leave empty. Love your hands. Love them. Raise them up and kiss them. Touch others with them. Pat them together. Stroke them on your face. Because they don't love that either. You got to love it. You. And know they ain't in love with your mouth. Yonder, out there, they will see it broken and break it again. What you say out of it, they will not heed. What you scream from it, they do not hear. What you put into it to nourish your body, they will snatch away and give you leavings instead. No, they don't love your mouth. You got to love it. This is flesh I'm talking about here. Flesh that needs to be loved. Feet that need to rest and to dance. Backs that need support. Shoulders that need arms. Strong arms, I'm telling you. And oh, my people out yonder, hear me. They do not love your neck unnoosed and straight. So love your neck. Put a hand on it, brace it, stroke it, and hold it up. And all your inside parts that they just as soon slop for hogs, you got to love them. The dark, dark liver. Love it. Love it. And the beat and beating heart, love that too. More than eyes or feet. More than lungs that have yet to draw free air. More than your life-holding womb and your life-giving private parts. Hear me now. Love your heart. For this is the prize. Saying no more, she stood up then and danced with her twisted hip the rest of what her heart had to say, while the others opened their mouths and gave her music. Long notes held until the four-part harmony was perfect enough for their deeply loved flesh.
Good morning. I remember the first time I read that passage from Toni Morrison's book, Beloved. I was on an airplane and I sat sobbing. And I had to close the book for a while to just let it all sink in. But I've not read anything since then that reminds me of the power of touch and the power of love as a means of not only healing the violence that we may experience, but helping us to remember that our bodies and our hearts are meant to be loved. You may or may not know this, but in 2001, when I was feeling a loneliness in my life, having just left the United Methodist Ministry, thinking I would move closer to my children, Emma and Taylor, and their mom, Leanne, who 2 years prior had moved to Blacksburg. I was debating between whether or not to live in Atlanta or Roanoke. They're so similar. Roanoke, Atlanta seemed really exciting because I was newly out. And it seemed to me that Atlanta was a place where someone who identified as gay might find a good and meaningful life. Roanoke, I wasn't sure. In 2000, there had been an act of gun violence here at the Backstreet Cafe, where a man named Ronald Gay, who despised his last name, came into town to waste some gays and killed Danny Overstreet and injured 6 others. And the city was certainly reeling from that, and I was uncertain as to whether Roanoke was a place I could feel calm and safe and loved in, as Jesse reminded us. But I met a friend, Reverend Catherine Houchins, who at that time was pastor of the Metropolitan Community Church downtown on Kirk Avenue, and she said, "Why don't you give Roanoke a try? This is Pride Month. There are activities every weekend, just give it a try." I said, okay. So the first thing that she told me about was a pride prom. And it was here, in this room. Now, my history with proms in high school was not extraordinary. I usually managed to ask a date who was usually a good friend, and I would go, and dancing was never my thing, but something within me welled up and said, I am going to prom. And I made my way here to the Unitarian church and walked into this room, and without a date, and I just spent the night talking with people and asking them about this place. And then at the very close of the evening, a man by the name of David Charles Campbell, some of you may know him, he was the longtime organist and choir director at St. John's Episcopal Church. He sauntered in and in his glorious way said, oh, you must come back next week for the spaghetti dinner and auction. Again, in this place. The spaghetti dinner was right in there, and then we transitioned from there into this place. And when I came into the auction, he was the only one I knew, and I sat right in the back, right under that window, because that was a good place to just sit and observe. Well, that evening, I was observing as people came in, and I observed this nice-looking young man who walked in with two other nice-looking young men. And the whole night, we eye danced. And at the end of the evening, which, I love auctions for a good cause, but when an auction goes 3.5 hours, it's a bit long. And I had signed up to help clean up and stack chairs and move things around. And in the course of that evening, for some reason, he stayed. And we walked toward each other, and I'm thinking we met right about there. And he said, hi, I'm James. And I said, hi, I'm Joe. And we set a date for the next day at the Pride in the Park Festival. And because he'd been to a lot of big Pride festivals, he said, now, in case we don't see each other, we're going to meet at the fountain, the horse fountain, at the entrance of Highland Park. And I said, that's great, because I know nothing about Roanoke. Well, I rode with David Charles Campbell to Pride in the Park Festival the next day, which was at Highland Park, where the dog park is now, that little stage that's still there. And as we drove up, I saw him, James, laying out a blanket. And we had our first date. Well, now we're married. We've known each other those 21 years. We were able to legally marry almost 6 years ago now, here in Roanoke. And we have 4 children, my 2 older children that I mentioned, Emma and Taylor, and then our 2 children, Jenny and JJ. And we're pretty happy to be in Roanoke. But I wanted you to know that you played a part in welcoming me here and helping me know that Roanoke could be a place where I could feel loved and calm and safe. So thank you for that. On a hot Saturday afternoon in the late summer of 2019, a large crowd of concerned neighbors, hearts breaking over a recent rash of gun violence, gathered on the basketball courts at Melrose Park to hear the prayers and pleas of area clergy calling for an end to the violence and a return to a time of peace. Seated near the front on the right-hand side of the rows of chairs, the sun beating down, while awaiting the first speaker to rise on the stage, I turned my chair to talk with 3 women who knew something of the pain of loss, grief, and broken hearts in losing loved ones to gun violence. I listened to Rita Joyce tell me about her son, to Renee Taylor and Tracy Penn tell me about their dad and their brother, all of whom died from acts of gun violence. Though their loved ones had died in the late 1990s and early 2000s, their passion and love for them and for families poured out. They told me about an organization they founded in 2006 called Fed Up, which stands for Families Experiencing Deliverance Using Prayer, and whose sole aim was to provide an immediate and enduring presence of love in the lives of families broken apart by violence. Somehow, in and through the power of love and in the face of violence, these three women created new life out of death, opening their hearts to be with others. As we spoke that afternoon, they honestly reflected on the personal toll their original efforts had taken. The long hours of around-the-clock care and outreach, in addition to their love and care for their own families and their ongoing work responsibilities, and how they had struggled to raise enough funds to meet the many needs of families, which often included medical care, unexpected funeral expenses, and relocating families to a safer environment. 13 years later, the call to be present with hurting families had not diminished. I could see through their tears a deep love that they and I believe can transform this hurting world. Something shifts within us when our hearts are broken. The pain can be debilitating, even paralyzing. It can also become the catalyst for new life, born of a transformative love. In the article, Heartbreak, Violence, and Hope for New Life, Parker Palmer tells this Hasidic tale. A disciple asked the Rebbe, "Why does Torah tell us to place these words upon your hearts? Why does it not tell us to place these holy words in our hearts?" The Rebbe answers, "It is because as we are, our hearts are closed, and we cannot place the holy words in our hearts. So we place them on top of our hearts, and there they stay until one day the heart breaks and the words fall in." Palmer goes on to say that suffering breaks our hearts, but there are two quite different ways for the heart to break. There's the brittle heart that breaks apart into 1,000 shards, a heart that takes us down as it explodes and is sometimes thrown like a grenade at the source of its pain. Then there's the supple heart, the one that breaks open, not apart, growing into greater capacity for the many forms of love. Only the supple heart can hold suffering in a way that opens to new life. This is the truth I experienced in the presence of Rita, Renee, and Tracy that afternoon. And it is the gift that continues to unfold in them and through our community as we continue to find a way through our collective pain, suffering, and loss due to gun violence. In the fall of 2019, the Task Force to Reduce Gun Violence recommended that we work with Fed Up to achieve their 501c3 nonprofit status, and that we work with them to secure funding to sustain their efforts. While their lives are no less busy, their devotion continues to inspire countless families who find themselves reeling from the loss of loved ones to violence over these last 3 years. Last summer, after hours and hours of effort, and with funding from the Gun Violence Prevention Commission, Fed Up received a letter confirming their nonprofit status. And last fall, they started a grief support group for families who needed a place to gather, to cry, to share their stories, and to heal. With the help of a local licensed professional counselor and clergy, they hoped to welcome 3 or 4 people to their first session. 18 people came that first night. And at their recent session in December, over 30 people attended, including youth and children. Now they hope to have separate groups for these age groups where they feel more comfortable sharing their aching hearts. And in addition, they're working with Chris Roberts, our city's youth and gang violence prevention coordinator, to create a mentoring and youth employment summer program to work with children who are struggling in school and help redirect them into a path of possibility and success that doesn't lead to violence. As I stand before you this morning, despite our extraordinary prevention and intervention efforts over the last 2 years, Roanoke experienced 18 homicides and 49 aggravated assaults in 2022 related to gun violence. Though not reported as often, death by overdose in Roanoke was 4 times the number of gun-related homicides. 4 times. Of the 67 cases recorded in 2022, 33 were in Northwest Roanoke and 15 in Northeast. 19 of the cases have been closed by arrest, 15 are under active investigation, and 20 are inactive due to a lack of evidence or an unwillingness of witnesses willing to talk due to fears of retaliation or lack of protection. It's a lot to take in. And in all truthfulness, I, along with many community leaders and partners, are exhausted from the struggle. But we're finding a way to draw from the depths of our collective reservoir of love, passion, and optimism to keep it going. Because we believe that love has the power to transform our city, even when we don't always see it. The trauma in our city is profound, the suffering overwhelming. And even as we continue our efforts to address the root causes of violence, there is a hard truth that continues to be present, said very clearly again by Parker Palmer. Violence is what happens when we don't know what to do with our suffering. Violence is what happens when we don't know what to do with our suffering. But we can ride the power of suffering toward new life. This journey from not knowing what to do with our suffering into the power of riding suffering toward new life taps into the heart of love and its work in our lives. And it is one in which we must be very careful not to turn our longing and passion for the world to be a safer place into a scenario that unintentionally creates more suffering or violence. The Trappist monk and spiritual writer Thomas Merton once said, "There is a pervasive form of modern violence in which the idealist most easily succumbs: activism and overwork. The rush and pressure of modern life are a form, perhaps the most common form, of its innate violence. To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone in everything, is to succumb to violence. The frenzy of the activist neutralizes his or her work. It destroys the fruitfulness of his or her work because it kills the root of inner wisdom, which makes work fruitful." Before and while we do this work to relieve our community's suffering and pain, we must continually reflect on how we are dwelling with ourselves. and each other. We are called to tend to our spirits, even as we devote our efforts to the spiritual care of our community. In other words, how we tend to our hearts will reveal in some measure how we are able to tend to the hearts of each other. When baby Suggs finishes up her sermon in the clearing, after everyone has given everything they have and are exhausted from the crying, the dancing, and the healing, she says clearly and deeply, "Hear me now. Love your heart, for this is the prize." And then, saying no more, she stood up and danced with her twisted hip the rest of what her heart had to say, while the others opened their mouths and gave her the music. Long notes held until the four-part harmony was perfect enough for their deeply loved flesh. There is nothing more beautiful than the music created by a community whose hearts are in tune, singing a perfect four-part harmony. How is it with your heart? How is it with mine? Every day, we are called to give away our hearts. But first, we must ask ourselves, are our hearts in our own possession? And what is in our hearts to offer? When we know our own heart and what is within our heart to offer, our offering will come from a place of deep care for what we can truly give, and not just tossing away what we have without our love being fruitless and our spiritual selves being sapped and wrung dry. In his hymn setting of 1 Corinthians 13, commonly known as the love chapter, Hal Hobson creates a sung invitation which goes something like this. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not begin my love within, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed, by this we worship and are freed. I believe this is the freedom we long for, to give our hearts to that which not only comes from a deep place of love, but also emerges as a transformative force for good in the world. It is a spiritual freedom that embodies boundless love and restful resistance. In the summer of 2021, a group of community leaders were invited to the Dumas Center on Henry Street in Gainesboro to listen to the voices of 7 young African-American men and their experiences of gangs and violence in our community. As we gathered in the intimate theater on the 2nd floor, hidden behind our COVID-19 masks and spacing ourselves out in 6-foot appropriate ways, we could hear shuffling from behind the red curtain, drawn so that we could hear the young men's voices while honoring their confidentiality. One by one, they shared their stories, their fears, their hopes. I remember thinking how much courage it took for them even to speak their truths, to honestly acknowledge their stories in a room full of strangers. One of them, whom I didn't know at the time, made the decision to come from behind the curtain and speak to a group of 80 youth service providers a few months later, and talk about the challenges of emerging from a gang into a new life of possibility. Mac was a sophomore at William Fleming High School when he first attended the African American Culture and Contemporary Issues class started by TAP in 2008 as a way to keep young Black men from dropping out of high school. Mac enjoyed it so much that he enrolled again in his junior year, and that is when he was introduced to Antonio Stovall, who began teaching it that year. Antonio, who grew up in Roanoke and graduated from Patrick Henry High School and now serves as an outreach specialist with our city's youth and gang violence prevention team, faced his own challenges as a young Black man in the city. He trained in breath work and mindfulness practice and began to teach the young men in his care how to better understand their cultural history, identity, and purpose, while teaching them to always return to their breath and their minds and see how in every moment they have the ability and promise of hope and changing the trajectory of their lives. In 1 year, Mac learned things he'd never learned before. Yet he continued to face the challenges of leaving the gang culture and the power of violence. When he spoke to the youth service providers that summer day, he sounded hopeful and peaceful and courageous. Few of us knew the challenges he would face in sharing his story. Halfway through his senior year, he was shot and injured. And while he was in his hospital bed, he shared this revelation. I've been misled. I've been shot. I've been in gangs. I've been in blood. I did all that stuff. For me to make it out of that, it was kind of like a gift. Tapping into what he was learning about his own gift of love and capacity to love and the positive influence he could have on others, especially younger youth and children, Max said, I always wanted to be a leader, but not in that type of way. It's me versus me all the time. I never realized that, but I realized that night it was me versus me. I had never owned up to myself that I was hard-headed. I didn't want to listen, but I owned up to it. It kind of brings peace to my heart too, that I let that go. Mac continues to heal. And as he heals, he is opening to the new ways in which he can love himself and others. He has learned through all those who love him that the most important thing is to love your heart. That is the greatest prize. So in all of our loving, may we remember to love ourselves. And by doing so, measure our love in a way that creates a fruitful path to share our gifts and help others discover their own. Then, as a community, we'll come to see what we've been seeking to do all along. That the only way through violence is love. Thank you.
Today's offering will be designated for a donation to the UUA Disaster Relief Fund from our congregation. The UUA Disaster Relief Fund is there to help congregations affected by storms, floods, and landslides. But they need your help now. The fund is near depletion, and they have only just begun to hear from congregations in affected areas. Your contribution to the UUA Disaster Relief Fund now will allow them to grant recovery funds right away to California congregations and their members who need it, and any others facing natural disasters in the days and weeks to come. So any cash in the baskets this morning will go towards this fund, or you may write a check with UUA Disaster Relief in the memo line. And there is a link on our website if you want to donate online. Thanks for whatever you can give. We're grateful for the gifts of your time, your talents, and your finances to support the work of this church.
Slowly. I'm Jane Harrison. I'm covering for Linda Wood this morning, who is recovering from a bout of pneumonia. She's getting much better, but she really doesn't feel like she should come out just yet. I'm a member of the caring committee, as is Linda, and one of our many duties is we share the joys and the concerns of this congregation on Sunday mornings. If you have a joy or a concern you wish to share, you can call Sally Garber, who's president of the caring committee. You can leave a message in the church office, or you can write in the Lifelines book, which is kept on the altar on Sunday mornings. Well, this morning I presently have no joys or concerns to share, other than Bill says that Chris Jordan is recovering also from a bout of pneumonia. However, if there's no joys to share, if you have a joy or concern in your heart, you can please come forward and light a candle for that joy or that concern. Please use both sides of the altar. Bill, will you help me? Okay.
Let us pray. May the lights of these candles brighten our love as the spirit of love illuminates our lives. And may this peace dwell within us now and forevermore. Amen.
Only a couple of announcements this morning, but they're important ones. First of all, big changes are afoot at the UUA. There is a proposed bylaws revision on Article 2 that affects our 7 principles, as well as our work on the proposed 8th principle. It incorporates the action and accountability emphasized by the 8th principle and the core values represented by our 7 principles into a new emphasis on building beloved community. There will be a delegate vote on preliminary approval of the revision at this year's General Assembly in June. Anyone interested in seeing the proposed revision or in becoming a delegate to the GA, please see either me, Erica, Catherine Hoffman, or Lynn Yates. There will be some more detail on this in our February newsletter, so look for that, the anchor. You can also go to uua.org and type Article 2 into the search box. The last item listed under coming events in your order of service, the Towson University Chorale will be coming through Roanoke on their way back to Towson, Maryland, from their tour in Atlanta. UUCR is lucky enough to host them for a concert on Friday night, January 27th, thanks to a connection with Dotsy Clifton. The concert is free and open to the public, 7 p.m. this Friday night, the 27th, here. In addition, they will be coming by bus directly from Atlanta to the church. So we need a few people to help feed this crew of about 25 students about 5 p.m. If you're interested in helping to cook a meal for the traveling troubadours, please let our music director, Carrie Borgevich, know. She says we need just probably a few casseroles and some salads, and whatever you would like to contribute will be gratefully accepted.
So for our parting words today, I'd like to end with where we began. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches on the soul and sings the word and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. Hope never stops at all. Go in peace.
That don't go. I would stand over there to keep them on track. Thank you.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And that's just absolutely.
I have to record that sound from you so you can